Hi everyone, how's it going? John Stanton here, IG Live with you and the incredible Damian from ARO HA. And so Damian is coming in. Okay, perfect. So last time we were chatting to Damian, we had a really good time with just me chatting a whole lot about neuroplasticity. But this time we have the original mountain man from New Zealand, Damian. I'm in a rolling chair this time, so you too, buddy. I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. That was my celebration. That was it.
That was
right there.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So last time, Damian, you got to hear me monologue about neuroplasticity and all kinds of really interesting things about cultivating a positive mindset while you sent
I was impressed.
Sexy messages.
You know what I think that was a perfect example of like spiritual practice in the moment. The stress is on, you handled it beautifully. You rocked it.
Thank you. Thank
well
you.
Done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, you know, we're going to keep the compliments coming, not just for me, but everyone on this call. There's a lot of, because basically what we're going to be talking about today on this IG Live is cultivating a positive mindset. However, the big reason why I wanted you on this IG Live is something that we've talked about consistently over the past few years, is this concept of bringing in wisdom, what we call wisdom, into the modern era. And the way that Chōsen's done bringing in wisdom is actually we trick people with neuroscience and performance and helicopters. But I wanna actually talk to you about your journey and how you've gotten to very similar places we have with your own experience with wisdom, ancient wisdom, and bringing that into modernity. Go. Uh-oh. I can hear you, or I can see you, but I can't hear you. You no longer hear me. This is everyone who's joining, don't worry about it. Damian is in New Zealand and they are just introducing 2G to New Zealand. So he's going to be talking a little bit about his own personal journey. I'm going to introduce him now that he's slightly delayed. Damian is the co-founder of ARO HA, which is an incredible property south of, or actually it's northwest of Queenstown. We do our New Zealand version of our Living with Impact experiences there, and have been working with Damian for a few years. The property is bar none one of the best, or the best wellness property that I've been to. And part of what's really captivating, hey Damian.
I'm back.
We're back.
Technology.
So part of what's really captivating about ARO HA is that Damian, so his background is in helping people and breaking through, and a lot of the same things that Chōsen has to the core of our programming, but he is also a developer. And he built this ridiculous property out in the middle of nowhere sustainably. So we're going to talk about how all of that is connected today.
Awesome. Yeah. Sounds good to me, man. I'm in.
So you tell me, Damian, I want you to give us a little bit about your background and how you arrived to basically developing not just the program that you guys have at ARO HA, but also the actual physical property. How did you get to that place? From this perspective of learning and taking on challenges that seemingly were way above your original skill set. Now you're, a ridiculous human. You were all from the beginning, but I want to hear the story.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, man. I mean, I guess it's looking back on it, it kind of started in a place very similar to what I love to teach now, which is, I wasn't feeling so great. I was working a lot and doing something I didn't really love, and I had gone to school for business and IT, and while I still appreciate those genres, at the end of my days, I wasn't feeling great. And so I started poking around and looking around, and really spent a couple of years of exploration to finally come to something that should have seemed obvious, which is just the idea that we should do things that we like. You know, we should do things that we love, ideally. And so I jumped off, and I had a friend out in LA that was was working at a health retreat as a yoga teacher. So I went from kind of high paying, corporate job to moderately paying, yoga teacher in LA. And I never turned back. Basically what happened was I went through a program that was really insightful. And at the time I had zero experience of the kind. And still to this day, I think it's one of the best experiences I've had. And so, as you know, you can take people through in a very short period of time, something that opens a door, and that door was opened for me. And I realized that health is a really interesting thing. You can be going about your life, doing the best you can, making the best choices you can make, and seeing the world in as rosy a disposition as you can. And it may not be feeling all that great, and it can be really tough. And I think it's natural to have that. I mean, we're humans that feel the full array of the human experience. So it's not to say that we should always be rosy or cheerful. But I think when there's a real consistency to it, when every day at work, or every day walking down the street, or there's when the body is telling us through sensation and through emotion and through continued suffering that things aren't right, we really have to listen to those messages. And I guess I'm living proof that really life can change, and it can change fairly quickly. And you can just shift. You can do something completely different with your life, and within a fairly short period of time, things can change. So I was in LA for 6 years. I ran retreats and just started getting into retreats, and started studying with anybody I could, and learning more about how this thing works and how this thing works. And it was one of the most enjoyable periods of my life, because I just kept feeling better and better, and I learned how to surf, and just was living a good life. And one of the stories I sometimes tell people is you could, if you went hiking, let's say, for 4 days, and you didn't shower, you wore the same clothes every single day, you didn't shave, you ended up looking like me. And
you look good.
Yeah, thanks, brother. And you're out in the sunshine, you're in the rain, the storm comes through, you're kind of cold at night, you're not totally comfortable, you're sleeping on the floor maybe, you're kind of covered in smoke because you made fire every night, and you cooked some food. At the end of those 4 days, you would feel so radically alive. You know what I mean? Far beyond what most of us feel, and yet you would stink. And you wouldn't have spent a single dollar, and like you'd really need a shower. And so most of us might not go there because of the discomfort, and yet you would feel radically alive. Like you would feel something burning inside you that was unique and special. And so I think what you and I do really well, and I love being a part of this community, and I have such fond memories of Chōsen, is that you kind of take people into that discomfort and into that edge. And all I remember was hanging off the side of some crazy waterfall, 100 meters above, nothingness, and going, how did I find myself here? And then of course at the end of that, I felt radically alive, So I guess that's how I ended up at ARO HA. I was running retreats, and I found a business partner who loved the same sort of things that I loved, and he was interested in doing it, and we didn't know where we were going or what we were going to do. And we hoped we didn't have to build. We really wanted to just find something that was perfect and that was sustainable. And that's just not how it worked out. So I ended up spending 4 years in development.
Well, first of all, that's amazing, Damian. I really love that campfire story. Is that the way that you describe it has multi-sensory inputs, it's like the scratchy beard and the smell and the smoke and and then that breakthrough at the end, it's lovely. And I think that's something that, you know, I'd love to do a piece on with you. And to me, what really resonates is that, you know, you went from being in a place where you were in business, you were in IT, and then you moved to being in a place of balance and learning about your body, learning about the things that make you feel good, that prompted joy and fulfillment in your life. And then there was this stretch that you had to do where you stretched and you became a developer. I want to hear about that a little bit, because a lot of our community, you know, high-powered business people, or even entrepreneurs and folks who might be transitioning or shifting from just starting their business to scaling the business, or you know, they're leaders. And right now, almost every single one of them are in a position where they're about to have to stretch, they're pivoting, they're trying to save their businesses, or even emotionally, they're struggling with redefining themselves. And I think that journey that you had, where you transitioned back into something that was so daunting, how did you deal with it? How were you able to come through that in the same balance or similar balance state as you went in?
Yeah, I think it's a story in and of itself. So it's, you know, I've been doing retreats. I learned a lot from running retreats, and then I got chucked into something that had a lot of speed and pressure, and nearly all of it was new. And so I think a lot of people listening, as you mentioned, would probably be feeling some of that stretch. And, you know, this pandemic is a stretch, and, you know, everything from working from home to, you know, considering if there was something else, like life does seem to keep asking us to stretch. And, yeah. And so I guess the story of ARO HA was that I put an enormous amount of pressure on myself. So the insight looking back is that nobody was putting the pressure on me. I was the only one in here, and I was the one in there going, don't mess this up, don't mess this up, don't mess this up. This is the chance, you got to do it right. It's got to be perfect. And what about this? And what about that? And staying up late and, you know, doing 70-hour weeks and not giving myself weekends and not doing yoga, not meditating, and basically doing everything I would not recommend people to do, and then feeling in a grand fashion what it's like to go from healthy California surfer to, you know, stressed out developer over the course of 3 or 4 years. So I got a really big dose. I don't think I'd ever had that level of sustained self-inflicted stress in my life. And I, you know, left my home, and I left all my friends, and, you know, a very close family member passed away, and, you know, I was in the midst of nowhere and challenging relationship. Like, it sounded like a bad country song, you know? And so it all kind of
or a good country song.
Or a good country song. But you know what, I'll tell you what, man, looking back on it, and it's something that I've learned the lesson so well, that I bring it into every stressful moment. Like today, I was flying up to Auckland, and I was on the way to the airport, and it looked like I was gonna miss my flight, you know? And so I was in one of these moments again, where you're driving down the road, and there's a pressure, and there's a stress. And what I've learned is everything is gonna seem important. Me missing my flight seemed important enough to me that maybe I should be stressed out about it, and maybe I should not enjoy my trip to the airport. And I started to notice a little knot in my stomach, a little rush, a little this, a little that. And then I'm like, you know what? Nah, it's just not, you know, that you miss the flight or you don't, you know, and it all works out. And so to me, spiritual practice, or the sorts of practices of resilience that we're interested in are in all these little moments. They're in these, like, they're in the most mundane stress, when somebody cuts you off in traffic, or when the cashier at the register is a bit snotty, or, you know, what those day-to-day moments, that the single thought that passes through your head that says, you got to get this right, or who are you going to be if you're not who you are, or what happens if you don't make as much money, or, you know, these little moment by moment kind of micro, you know, possibilities are where the work happens. And we basically have to unwind something that's genetically fairly close to us as being prey animals and being, you know, those that were most fearful and most warlike and most kind of, yeah, I guess, you know, who slept the least at night, you know, with the knife on our chest to make sure that we were safe. Like, that's in our ancestry. And so now I think the world has a tendency towards stress and anxiety. And I don't know that we're pulling the tools together in the mainstream culture quick enough to support people, you know. And that's where I think places like Chōsen and ARO HA come into play, is that's what we're focused on, is like, how do we shift?
Yeah, and you know, Damian, you touched on some amazing points there. There's a few things that you said that are really funny, and I want to put them in context. So Damian's drive to the airport, you would actually fly. There are people who fly to New Zealand to ride in vehicles or motorcycles on the road that Damian is talking about. So it's not just Damian was on this road and it's, you know, busy, hectic, like you're in the middle of, you know, Frankfurt or what have you. No. This is like literally people, human beings fly to this part of the world to have that experience. And so even for you, you made a choice not to be stressed out and enjoy this remarkable experience that you were having, which I think touches on the learning that you had during your time as, you know, go from surfer yogi by choice to stressed out developer, also by choice,
Totally.
and then recovering from that. And I think, you know, Damian, you know, what I really love about that is that vulnerability that you're showing there, because it's not something that a lot of people would own, you know, that concept of like, I chose to be stressed out and live in a way that I knew didn't serve me. And that's something that, you know, I think giving people the hope, right, that owning that is the first step in coming back to what's important to you, is something that really resonated with me, particularly during this time of disconnection and hyper stress that we're oftentimes putting on ourselves. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. You know, I remember my times at Chōsen, and I remember how intimately we were involved with things like restorative yoga and meditation and breath work and exercise, you know, all scientifically proven to kind of pull us out of sympathetic nervous system activity and drop us into parasympathetic. And I, you know, if you're somebody who loves the kind of the internal workings of it, I kind of think about that as like my primary mission, is that I want to live as little of my life in fight or flight as I possibly can. And I want to lean into those moments. Yeah. And check out whether it's possible to be relaxed, you know, while in traffic, or relaxed while someone isn't, you know, while someone else is kind of in a different state. It almost is like a little bit of a game to me to really kind of inquire into the edges of where I can be comfortable. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you're talking about exploring your comfort zone and setting boundaries simultaneously. We need a masterclass. We need a Damian communication masterclass.
Let's do it.
This is happening.
Episode one.
That's right. So there's a lot of people that want to, you know, ask specifically now that we've framed this, because it's actually pretty challenging. Part of what we do at Chōsen, part of the reason we have credibility is that we started this as VCs in the sustainability space. So there's a lot of science behind what we were doing to begin with. And then my personal background is in evolutionary psychology and behavioral neuroscience and athletics. And so we jokingly say that we're able to trick people into getting into the wisdom, the wise arts, with science, with also our own backgrounds. And that's part of the reason why we talked a little bit about your journey as a developer, who you really stretched outside your comfort zone, and you found that you were doing very similar things to what we all do when we're in that situation. And you came back to a place where now your goal in life is to spend as much time in calm as possible, and it's a game. So yeah. Thank you for that. That was really amazing. A lot of the questions that our viewers and people that are going to be looking at this on a recording ask is a big question is actually, what do you do on a daily basis to practice this kind of calm? So what is, say, your morning routine and your evening routine?
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine most of the people that are listening have meditated at least a bit, at least enough to know what goes on when you sit down and you close your eyes and sit still for a little bit. And so I would say the primary practice that I have is meditation. I meditate twice a day. I've used kind of the psychology of change, which has been really helpful for me to kind of one habit at a time start to kind of install some of these habits that I know work for me. And so meditation is the entry point. Even if somebody has just told you to pay attention to your breath for a few moments, you've experienced that when you take the advice, that your world gets simpler, you know, that just one breath of presence has this magical quality of dropping all of the baggage, even if for just a breath. And so I think of it as like ground zero. Meditation is what allows me to remember what actually is, right? The rest of everything is happening mostly here. Take one breath. I'm here with my breath. My breath actually is my body in the chair, the light coming in through the window, all the kind of the essences of the moment are what actually is. And then the mind is incredible, you know, it goes off and it thinks about all kinds of stuff and creates all sorts of problems and tries to solve them and does a lot of monkeying around, I guess. And so for me, it's really good to kind of touch that foundational space once a day, twice a day. And then, you know, that's the entry point. And what I notice is that with meditation, it comes with me through my day because because I'm just noticing what's going on. And it's not like I sit and I'm in bliss the whole time. No, I sit there and my mind generates all kinds of garbage, right? But I notice the garbage. Yeah. And so then when I'm noticing the garbage, I'm like, whoa, more garbage. What a trip. This thing just makes garbage, you know, like most of the time, you know, I'm thinking about all kinds of stuff, you know, and I have a hard time shutting it off, right? But in that noticing, you start to spend a little bit more time as the witness to the thing. And the thing, if it speaks English like mine does, was just given to you by someone else who spoke English, another hairless monkey. And so you've kind
There's a delay with Damian. Don't worry, he's going to hop back on. We'll pick up right where he left off in case you guys are seeing the delay that I am. So he's going to talk. Oh, there you are.
You're going to trip out. Can I just tell you what happened? This is funny.
The last thing you said from our side was hairless monkey, and then it paused. And so that whole time, I'm in the middle of a meditation with you, buddy. I was like, oh, look at this.
I'll finish one thought and then I'll tell you what happened because it's quite funny and it has to do with change as well. So meditation is the entry point. You know, it's the place where we find our foundation. It's the place where we touch base with our essential self, the self that was there when you were born, the self that was probably there inside your mother, you know, that pure witnessing consciousness that you are, and that the part of you that really doesn't need the world to be resolved in order for you to be happy. It's just there and it's okay, you know? So when I touch that, I'm like, okay, at least I know I'm home, and that's kind of like home base. And then I play with bringing that sort of awareness into my thoughts and my observations and my stresses. And from there, basically the other piece is inquiry. You know, we have so many thoughts, and some of them are really effective and helpful, and they'll put a man on the moon and, you know, design autonomous vehicles and, you know, do incredible things, right? Like, you know, the mind is exceptional. And a large amount of what we think is really not helpful. You know, if you were to actually have Siri just write down
Mm-hmm.
every single thought you had through your entire day, it'd be a bit
Yeah.
embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of stuff in there. There's insecurities and worries and concerns and angers and frustrations and excitements and
Mm-hmm.
joys and cravings and
Yeah.
horniness and, you know, all the stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we have to eventually slow down enough and kind of hold up some of the murk to the light and just kind of figure out if it's serving us or not.
I'm going to jump in here before you tell
Go
your
for it.
story.
Yeah.
What I love about what you're saying, and you're saying it without saying it, so I want to be overt. And there's a couple of people who ask what type of meditation you like, and so you're describing it, right? And you're describing this concept of noticing, witnessing, and not judging. And that's what I absolutely love, and that's something that a lot of people, there's a lot of mysticism behind meditation. What is it? What's going on? Do you just sit there? Are there no thoughts, etc.? And what I love the way that you describe it, it's like there's thoughts, and as you said, there's some garbage. There's like a garbage machine, and you just were able to, or are able, because you choose to do it this way, to witness it. And as you continue to witness it, it just dissipates, which is beautiful. And another thing that really resonated with me on your points here is that there's so much noise, garbage, as you said, but there is the opportunity when focused to put someone on the moon.
Totally.
Right. And so that's what I love about our engagement, is that when I'm around you, it feels like you are focused, you know, on me, on our conversation, on interaction, or if you're driving, you're focused on the drive, and you're in the moment, and you're cultivating this presence, which is incredible. So that's something that I want everyone to take away from this conversation with you, is that meditation, let's demystify it. You're witnessing and you're not judging. And then the other side of that is Damian is talking about this amazing potential that we all have when we choose presence and focus on purpose. So Damian, give us a little story about what happened earlier, and then bring this to a close.
Well, okay, sounds good. So, I mean, one of the things I really am enjoying, genuinely enjoying, and I find one of the most potent tools that I've come across is call it the psychology of change, or the way I often talk about it is like my pathway to change. So I don't think most of us, unless you're really kind of clued out and you're missing the whole thing, most of us notice that we have aspects of ourselves that need tweaking. We notice that we have a habit of doing this or that. We have one too many drinks, or we, you know, look at our screens too long, or, you know, whatever. Like I think most of us, I hope, see some of these kind of little habits that really aren't serving us, you know. And so then the more you kind of see that, the question becomes, can I do anything about it? What a trip. Like I totally noticed that I keep picking up my phone. You know, you look at how many times you picked it up today, and it was like 67 pickups or something, whatever, you know, like a lot of pickups, right? And it's like, how do I work with some of these habits that aren't serving me? And I'm a big fan of spending time in the guts of what works for you in changing habits, and just choosing one for the year. You know what I mean? Like pick the thing that's the low hanging fruit, the one that makes you most hungover. You know, it doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be, you know, a relationship. Like your work can make you hungover, you know, like sitting too much all day can make you hungover. You know, your food can make you hungover, et cetera, et cetera. And so notice the thing within your life that really leaves you suffering. And then just choose one aspect of that thing once you figure out where you want to head, and just focus in on changing that one thing. So one of the things I've been working on, and so with this process, I've quit drinking, which is amazing. And I promise you, on the other end of not drinking, it actually feels better. You know, I've quit drinking coffee, et cetera.
Wow.
But one of the ones that, yeah, I know, tricky one, that one. And actually, I would say coffee, you know, in comparison to alcohol, I think coffee is a much more benign habit. But one of the ones that I found most difficult is technology, smartphones, the thing we're on right now. I find incredibly addictive. And I've used the same techniques, and I'm in it right now. So basically what happened a moment ago was that my screen time, which my wife controls, so she she has some control over my phone, and I have some control over hers. My screen time kicked in. And basically she needed to give me more screen time on Instagram, because Instagram is one of the things that, you know, is the social media that you know, is persuasive, as they say. And so basically it's just one of the techniques we're using. So I thought it was funny that we were talking about change. But the rule, so the I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in some of the social media apps, there is something referred to as streaks. And what psychologists realize is that when you and I do something and we create a streak, we start doing something over and over again, we don't want to break the streak. So in Snapchat, if I message you once and then again, and you and I start a streak, I don't want to break the streak. I've done 50 days, I've done 100 days, I've done etc. And something as stupid as keeping a streak going will have me messaging you with like pictures of my toast, so that you know, we don't break our streak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so anyways, you can use that same psychology for good, much like you can use your screen to do yoga, and you can listen to Insight Timer, and you can meditate, and you can put your, you know, you can do yoga nidra and so many amazing things on these devices. So it's not to say that you know, the devices aren't serving us. It's just that we need to be really wise about what we choose and what we let go of. And so anyways, there's a great app on there.
Damian will join us here back in a minute.
Oh no, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You're back.
Can you hear me? Oh, cool. Awesome. Anyways, we use something called streaks, and you basically create one new habit at a time. So the one I've been really working with, and which has also been challenging, is not having my phone, not using my phone in the bedroom is essentially the streak. And I know it's tricky, but just that, actually, you know, I would imagine, I mean, the stats I've seen is that at least 80% of us, first thing in the morning, we roll over and we grab our phones and we're swiping. And so just to keep it out of the bedroom, to make it not the last thing you see before you go to bed and not the first thing you see in the morning, is quite a good stretch. Yeah.
Well,
what do you do?
I think that comes for me. I do quite a similar thing that you are talking about. Is what I've noticed is that I have a tendency of taking on too many changes all at once, and that stresses me out. But I originally didn't ever want to actually say, "Hey, this is stressing me out." And so I think that's something that is actually, to your point, is something that I really wanted to loop back on. And in this age of multitasking, first and foremost, the human mind, doesn't matter if you're a female or a male, cannot multitask. I invite you all to look that up, and not on, you know, Facebook, but actually like neuroscience.com or some, you know, Scientific America or something along those lines. Like, get a white paper. The brain cannot do it. And basically the way that we instill or we work through behavior change is you take a direction that you're committed to, which, Damian, you're committed to this type of behavior change and you've made a choice to do it, and then you actually practice it. And so that's the way that I do it. It's basically anytime where I see something that I need to change, I try to have an experience of change around it versus understanding it academically, and then put one little bit of the practice in every day. And that's how I do it.
Amen.
Just like you.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
I saw one question down there that I answer the question about the meditation? Sasha asked, do you prefer any particular style of meditation?
Yeah. I referenced it earlier, but why don't you go ahead and do it again?
Yeah, as a quick answer to that question, all forms that I've ever found, I'll practice, and it has changed over the years. And I definitely recommend, if you're new to meditation, try a lot of different teachers. There are so many amazing, insightful teachers out there, and just like something like yoga, or even if you were finding a boxing teacher or any sort of instructor, it's really worth trying a few, because you'll find one that really speaks to you and that nails it for you, and drops you in. So yeah, these days I basically just follow my own practice. I don't really actually follow any particular style.
Yeah, and I like that it's in the way that you describe it, Damian, is it demystifies it, you know, in a very straightforward way. You know, just finding that place where you're not judging, I think is challenge enough for people, where you can sit down for 2 minutes and not judge your thoughts.
Amen.
I challenge all of you guys to do that. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Let's start with 15 seconds. So guys, we're going to loop back with Damian in the future. Damian, you're on the hook for some more conversations, because it was a lot of fun having a conversation with you. And can't wait to be back in ARO HA at a Chōsen Impact experience sometime in the near future. Lots of love, and everyone who's still on board with us right now, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you in the next Chōsen Insight series. Meet the Chōsen community, Chōsen alumnus, Damian, co-founder of ARO HA, developer, single arm handstand aficionado, and all around badass.
Thanks, John. See you guys.
See you soon.